Welcome, Stephen. How are you?
I'm very good, actually. How are you doing? You all right? It's good to be here. Thank you
Uh,
for asking me.
in fact, just before I jumped on, I was saying that I've just done a session of CrossFit, so I'm a little bit sweaty, but all good. I'm glad. I enjoy doing morning workouts because they get my blood flowing and stuff. But today we're here to talk about purpose. And before we jump straight into purpose, can you tell us your story?
Oh, wow. How long have you got? So my story, yeah. I mean, I'm a veteran of the car industry. So I joined the automotive industry in 1985, and did various roles across the industry from sort of car salesman right the way through to my final role was as executive director of a business. So 40 odd years. I was married. I had two children. And I kind of knew in the mid 80s that there was something not quite right. And well, told myself there was something not quite right because I was curious about sexuality. But anyone who was around in the early to mid 80s will know that unless you were on one side of that fence or the other, your journey was not going to be easy and not going to be pleasant. And it just wasn't. It was it wasn't that kind of environment back then. So I carried on with life, did what people do and what society expects you to do, and then in 2020 the wheels completely fell off that bus, and all of the mental health issues that I'd sort of been hiding and holding on to for many years all came out at once. Divorce, family separation, breakup, business down the pan, and pandemic as well. If you remember that, and yeah, on the back of that, then I created an organization called Menable, which is actually Enable with a big capital M. If you can see it visually, so it's not just aimed at men, but with a founding principle that actually any industry that's male dominated and has a masculine energy needs to take care of men's mental health because, there's quite a lot going on for us poor old blokes. And very rarely do we get the chance or do we take the chance to talk about it. So that's kind of up to date, I suppose, in as much as I've been running Menable now for 5 years. I'm a speaker, event host, and and professional MC as well. And running Menable, I do lots of stuff with leaders and that around the mental health or mental wealth, as I call it, which I'll come on to later. And just to throw into the mix, most recently, one of the things that gives me most joy is that I'm a part-time drag queen. Weren't expecting that, were you?
Yeah, I think we did have this discussion, didn't we, beforehand? And when I go to festivals, at least once or twice throughout a festival, I will dress up as a woman, and I find it
Right.
very, very liberating. It's just I think as men, we get told we have to be that straight laced kind of guy who works hard, doesn't show our emotions, and basically stays on the traditional idea of what a man is.
Yeah.
And so, obviously, cross dressing isn't on the books there, is it really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I enjoy when I go to festivals. It's so much fun dressing up as a woman, and the amount of attention you get is unreal.
Yeah. No, I can get that. I think, I mean, drag in itself is actually, it's an art form. And, it's a performance art. And yeah, I absolutely love it. So yeah, I totally get it. And it's the focus that you need for sort of getting your makeup right and picking an outfit. And it's just a lovely hobby that I can be hired for. I do weddings, parties, all sorts of stuff.
That sounds quite cool. Everybody asks me at festivals now, what are you going to dress up as? And everybody, if I go to a new festival, they're like, "What's going on?" And
Mm.
even and I noticed that the festival I went to in August, I had all the kids coming up to me next day and saying, "Mate, that took a lot of courage." And I said to him, "Well, it's dead easy. Just go and put a dress on." And I was saying to the boys, "Next year, got an opportunity."
Yeah, 100%. Exactly.
So we're here to talk about purpose,
Hmm.
and purpose is such a big buzzword. What is your definition of purpose?
That's an interesting one. I don't know if I've got a specific definition. I can tell you what my purpose is. And I've done some work recently with a couple of clients actually who felt as businesses they'd sort of lost sight of what their purpose was. But I think at the very basic level, it's the why. I think it was Mark Twain that said there's 2 days most important days in your life. One is the day you're born, and the second day is the day that you realize why. And it transcends everything. I mean, yes, it's very spiritual in a way, but and I don't mean that in a religious sense necessarily. But it's the why. It's the what gets you to jump out of bed in the morning. What's the purpose behind the mission that you're on, at a personal level or as an individual. So yeah, there's loads of stuff out there. Simon Sinek, for example, does lots of videos and books around, start with why, which is turns the whole subject on its head. So yeah, that's how I'd define it. I think it's about why.
Yeah, I think with regards to purpose, my definition is it's something bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you might not accomplish in this life. But what it gives you is a direction,
Mm-hmm.
something to aim for. And as you said, it's something which gives you the drive, gives you passion, gives you enjoyment. And it's discovery. Like you can't come out straight out of school and say, well, actually, if you're lucky, you might know your purpose straight away. But for probably 99% of people, I found from my own perspective that it's a journey of discovery, of going down a rabbit hole, and going down the pursuits of, for me, it was personal growth and spiritual development. And obviously after 8 to 9 years, my purpose has changed over the time, and it just gets more and more defined.
Yeah, 100%. I think the problem is as well, we're very quickly from a young age, sucked into a world that's all about goals and aspirations and achievement and success. Well, certainly I was, in the 80s, and that was all about that. And my life was defined by it. And I still see it now in the masculine industries I work in. They're very results oriented, and you can very easily. And I get a lot of people who actually say, I can't understand what's the difference between purpose and goals. And we have to help them sort of take a bit of a step back and go, the purpose is exactly as you say. It's the bit that's bigger than you. The goal is finite. The goal is something you'll know when you get there. Whether it's how many cars you've sold or how much money you've made or how many customers you've spoken to, whatever, those are all goals. And your purpose is bigger, way bigger than that.
Yeah, it's almost like purpose is the whole picture. Your goals, I feel, are the little tiny steps which can gradually, in whichever direction you want to go in, take you towards your purpose, your mission, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, exactly that.
And I think there's with regards to, David Heiner, it talks about big goals. He talks about big, hairy, scary goals, and you've got to have, and that's kind of the purpose, I think. But then it's the small steps which get you to that point.
Yeah, I think I would break it down into, following, as I say, Simon Sinek's kind of model, if you want to call it that, of start with why. The why is at the heart of everything you do. Then you go out to the next layer, which is the how. How do you actually do that? And then at the final end of that is the what.
Yeah.
And too many people and too many organizations do that the other way around. And there's a great video out there where he talks about the difference between Apple and Dell, for example. And Apple was very much a case of Steve Jobs. starting with why. You know, he didn't start with his why was not, oh, let's build as many computers as we can and sell them to people. That was the Dell approach. That was coming from what and going the other way. And of course, you look at the difference between those two companies. One's astronomically successful, and the other one is still there, I think.
Mm.
So,
But is the idea that in schools we get taught, and that, in fact, I remember being at school in year 11, year 10, 11, and they're asking you what you want to be when you're older. How the hell am I supposed to know what I want to
absolutely.
be when I'm older?
Yeah.
And it's taken me probably 30 to 40 years to start to really hone in what I want to do.
Yeah.
And we're caught in this society where we get told, you go to school, you learn, then you go to school, you get a job, then you have family, and then you live a nice life, and
Mhm.
then you retire, and then that's it. But it's more than that.
Yep.
Especially if you can discover your purpose.
Yeah.
Was there what points in your life did you let's rephrase that. What were the turning points in your life that helped you to discover what your purpose was?
I think there have been a number of points, most of which have been a crisis of some description or another. And I think I first sort of became consciously aware of feeling that I lacked purpose, probably about 15 or so years ago, and then went on a very sort of rocky road to trying to work out what it was. And that's where the model that I found around the sort of working out that, well, it's actually as simple as just wanting to help people have happy lives again. You know, I went through all sorts of iterations of that, and none of it was sort of lit me up, if you like. Then I went through it again, sort of during the pandemic period, where then life was changing for me drastically with the divorce and family breakup and all the rest of it. But I've got to be honest that the most clarity that I've ever had around that was recently. And I think that's partly why, you and I are now chatting, because that's kind of if you like, the universe going, aha, right, you get it now. Right now I'm going to help you speak to this person and, and that person at this company. And, suddenly I've gone from earlier in the year where I was sitting there thinking, oh, well, hang on, I haven't invoiced anything for a few weeks, and now I'm starting to feel uncomfortable, and I know what the cash flow situation is going to be off the back of that. To clarity around my purpose, and suddenly the phone started ringing again. So I would say that the most powerful and biggest version of that has been, in 2025.
I will 100% agree. So for me, that's been the same. 2020, the last couple of weeks, last month, have been a turning point. And I've really managed to hone in. But it's all like I initially in my early 20s, actually 20s generally, I felt kind of lost, and I was umming what I wanted to do. But then after a breakup in my 30s, my first proper breakup, that kind of led me on to personal development in a big way. And gradually, that little small areas that just evolved, which led me to where I am now, with this idea of this deep sense of clarity, which was from wide open, massive area to this really honed in space.
Yep.
And it's almost like this year, I think this year for a lot of people is going to be a game changer.
I agree, and I'm starting to see that as well, and I think you see that because I think you and I, when we spoke on the phone a couple of weeks ago, agreed that every single one of us is vibrating at a frequency. You're sending out a sort of a bow wave in front of you, and you're only going to match and align with people who are on the same frequency, coming back the other way. And that's certainly how I feel. And I think that's why I'm now having much more powerful conversations with people who are aligned with me. and with my business than trying to eke that out of lots of conversations with people who clearly aren't resonating on the same frequency.
Mm.
That makes
Well,
sense.
this year's a 9-year, so next year will be back to 1 in numerology. So 2025, that's yeah. So 2025, you got 9. So obviously 10 goes back to 1. So next year will be a back to year 1. So it's all about, this year's all about endings. And then also at this moment in time, you're in between 2 eclipses. So this is where all the so the lead up to the eclipse, a couple of weeks before the eclipse, is the time where you start to realize what you need to release. And then as you get into between the 2 eclipses, that's where you do the work to release and also to start take the tech steps to the next phase. And so, yeah, we're in some powerful planetary, I can't even say the word. Yeah,
Planetary.
energy. Yeah, that's it. Energy. But
And I can feel that
along,
physically as well. I think I said to you before we started that I've got some, serious kind of shoulder and neck pain going on at the moment. And, I could put that down to, it's my pillow or the way I'm sleeping. But I'm thinking, well, why was that not a problem 2 weeks ago then? Why is that suddenly, started now? And I think you're right. I think it's got something to do with that. It's that sort of shifting of that energy washing through, if you like.
but it's also at this moment in time, it's a perfect opportunity to let go anything that no longer resonates.
Mhm.
And I know as people, not just men and women as well, like to hold on to things. But sometimes holding on to things can almost create more turmoil.
Yeah,
And so
true.
it's being able to have the courage to let go of what that no longer serves, whether
Yeah.
it's relationships, let go of limiting beliefs, the big one.
Yeah.
So over your time discovering your purpose, was there anything that you had to let go of, like limiting beliefs or mindset, in order to really step into who you are now?
Oh God, I mean, there's loads of stuff that I've had to, I suppose let go sounds really harsh, but it is in a way. I mean, there's, off the back of the breakup, there are family members, very, very close family members who have decided that, I, for whatever reason, do not figure in their lives. And, that's their decision. And I've had to let go of any sort of feeling of trying to influence or control that, because it's outside of my sphere of control and sphere of influence. I can't, all I can do is try to show that I'm a better person than I was, and hope that changes their view. But without them giving me the opportunity of communicating closely, then that's that is something that I can't keep worrying about that. I have to just let that go and just carry on with me as I am. And similarly, lots of other things related to that, sort of certain ways of working, certain ways of, I mean, at a stupid, silly level, I used to have what was probably the biggest collection of ties, neckties, that I'd wear for work. And I've got rid of nearly all of them. I've kept some of the nice ones that I like that were my favorites. But I've gone down from sort of a collection of 200 ties to probably 10, 20, something like that. And it's letting go of, like, that model worked for me 5, 10 years ago. It doesn't work for me anymore.
Is there any specific way that you let go, or do you just suddenly just decide it's gone?
No, well, I mean, in terms of anything to do with clothing and clutter in the house, I mean, that's easy. You can either dump it or charity shop it or whatever, or sell it. But I think from a personal point of view, this is why I said I think it's a bit harsh, because I don't think you can actually fully let it go. I mean, my door is always going to be open to those people who, have decided that they don't want to, be with me right now, but I can't do anything about that day to day. So I have to just not let it go, but kind of park it. If that makes
Mm.
sense, do you know what I mean? Just put it somewhere as like, right, okay, that's kind of in a drawer. I know where it is, but I'm not gonna, bring it out and keep staring at it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like at this moment in time, they might not vibrate on the same level as
Mm.
yourself, but maybe in the future
Mhm.
they they might be in a different place, and you'll be in a different place, so it might match.
Yeah, no, exactly. And on this subject of purpose, and again, particularly around why, there's another uh, PSA, Professional Speaking Association member called Amy Rowlinson, and she's written a book called Focus on Why, which Simon Sinek's is about start with why, hers is about focus on why. And one of the things that she talks about in there is about being a great ancestor, and having your descendants in the future look back and say, wow, I remember my grandfather for this or for whatever. So currently, um one of the people I'm referring to that's not in part of my life right now is my youngest son, and he's got two children, one of which I've never met. So you know I w- so that ancestor bit for me is really quite powerful, because I would, in the world that we're in, of sort of coming to terms with DEI or resisting it or whatever, I want them in the future to be able to look back and go, wow, my granddad was a drag queen. Now, I could never have imagined in a million years putting all of those words into the same sentence. But, wouldn't that be great to have your grandchildren in 40 years' time say, wow, do you know what? I didn't know him well, but my granddad was a drag queen. I just think, wow, that is so powerful. And that really joins up the whole kind of, you know, my purpose of helping people have happy lives again. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. It's reframing how you think about it. So rather than focusing on what's current,
Yeah,
it's focusing on a bigger bigger perspective from a bigger viewpoint.
yeah, exactly.
So if you go in regards to letting go, is there anything have you ever done anything which has helped you to physically let go, like a technique or something like that? Or it just kind of like, okay, I can't control it. Because sometimes we get into this mindset that we think we can let go, but then our mind wants to continue to go back. And have you had to go through that battle with your mind?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I refer to it as, it's almost like a series of tapes or CDs, where all this stuff is stored on it. And what we all as human beings have a tendency to do is to replay the same old things time and time again. And this works whether it's in the workplace or in making some kind of change, or relationships in particular. I get a lot of conversations with men who are struggling in their relationships, and women as well. Women confide in me quite a bit, and quite a lot of close friends that I've got that have had issues with relationships and they never know why. And my instant reaction to them is, well, it's because you're running the same tape again and again and again. You're going through the same narrative. And so, to answer your question about the technique, for me, um, and my technique looks a lot like procrastination, because my technique is, I know you like your fitness and you go off to do stuff at the gym or whatever. For me, it's the opposite. My technique is to go, do you know what? I'm going to spend the next day slobbing on the settee and watching a film and eating cakes. And I'd snap out of that when I then go and put a pair of jeans on and go, oh, hang on, I've gone up a notch on the belt. And so I probably need to, reframe that a little bit. But I'm not obsessed about that. I'm not a particularly big guy, I don't think, probably carrying a bit extra for my age than I would be ideal, but I'm happy. Um, but yeah, so my technique is rest, it's relaxation, it's finding what gives me joy. That's the key thing. That's where the drag queen bit comes in, and it's doing more of that. So if joy is getting up, going for a walk, or going somewhere that's near water, or um, I don't know, going on a long train journey, or doing something a bit different, something that changes that tape in a different way, without repeating the same old narrative all the time. So yeah, so I don't know what you put that down to, as I say, because it quite often looks a lot like procrastination, but it's not. It's deliberate.
I wouldn't say it's procrastination because it's what gives you joy.
Mm,
There's days like I will sit on the sofa all day and binge watch films. Um, it depends upon, I suppose for me, it depends upon what my body wants. So
yeah.
for letting go, relationships have always been one thing that I have found really hard to let go. Um, but it's only that realization of, for me, it was the inner child healing. So I was pretty much used to be one of those what they'd see as Mr. Nice Guys,
Hmm.
and so I'd always look to try and prove or impress people with myself, and almost forget about myself. And one thing my friend said is that the best way to overcome that is to work with the what's called the base chakra. So grounding, so things like qigong, walking in nature barefoot, and obviously things like that help you to ground your energy, and from there everything can build. And so letting go has been a big journey for me. And there's still times when I don't let go very easily,
Mm,
but I'm getting a lot better. And that's it. It's continual progress.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that there's an old phrase that I picked up a while back, which is that, heal the boy and the man will show up. And when the chips were down for me, one of the things that I did was, I had a very good friend at the time who was a hypnotherapist, and she said, "Why, how about you come along and I'll do a session with you?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Then I went along, and it was transformational. I mean, I was in tears for most of it. And I've had a couple of sessions since where the same has happened. And what that dug up for me was that actually a lot of my issues related back to inner child issues. I don't want to say trauma, because I was never in a dangerous position. I had people around me who obviously loved me and cared for me, but they did that in the way that they knew how.
Mm.
Um, but of course, my subconscious then went to making some of the things that happened, make that have a meaning. And the meaning came out as loneliness, abandonment, and rejection. And I look back on it now, and I'm like, well, how ridiculous is that? Because I was never on my own. I was never rejected, and I certainly wasn't abandoned. So why has my subconscious played that tape over and over and over again? So it was coming to a place of going, no, actually, that's the stuff I need to let go. And like you say, I let go of that through, my version of going, no, get control on it, or at the very least accept that that's been a part of my life and it's not serving me well anymore.
That's powerful. It's inner child healing. I forgot the amount of times I've heard inner child healing from doing podcasts. But I feel as though it almost has to be repeated and repeated and repeated for men to understand that the inner child healing is so important. And for me, I've recently started doing some more mirror work. So staring myself in the mirror and connecting with that little boy inside me and telling me that I'm not going to I no longer abandon myself.
Mm,
And obviously, it's great saying that in the mirror. You then have to put that out into action in the world.
mm,
And so when there are occasions where you might find a woman attractive, almost don't allow yourself to chase love, allow love to come to you.
Yeah,
and
100%.
kind of come back to that idea that I'm not abandoning myself.
Mm. Oh, I mean, oh my God. I mean, on the subject of relationships, we could do a whole podcast on that. And I see stuff going on now, and I've just moved to a small little town, and there's a guy I've connected with who has clearly turned himself into a relationship coach, and he's all over Facebook with this stuff about, well, how do you heal a relationship once one of you has cheated in inverted commas. And I'm reading all this stuff, and I'm like, mate, seriously, you're talking about going over and over and over and over the same stuff again and again and again. Whereas what you've missed out on is the opportunity to sit down and be honest. Be totally honest and hold a mirror up to each other and go, what is going on here? Are we aligned? Are we vibrating at the same frequency? Are our beliefs and values the same? Because what we're trying to do is the system is trying to get us to cling on to what the normalcy expectation is. And it's not right. It's not working. So you're now trying to fix something that isn't broken, but you're trying to fix it to mold it into the shape of what you think it should be, when actually you're all you're going to do is give yourself stress and pressure, and you're going to end up breaking up anyway. It's going to happen. And that this is coming from somebody who's been there, done that, right? So there'd probably be people listening to this going, oh, that's a bit harsh. Well, it is, but as I said, I've got a very good friend who has gone through relationship after relationship, and we talked about this, oh, I've got a particular type. And my phrase is, well, replace the word type with the word tape. What you've got is a particular tape, T-A-P-E, like a recording. So your type is a tape. So what you're doing is you're putting in the same tape again and again and again. And my question to her is, how is that working out for you? Now that you're single. Does that make sense? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good way of seeing it, because you see people going into the same relationships and type and tape. I feel there's almost a similarity, but people can see that as massively different. But if you say tape, it almost relays back to the idea that you're replaying that same video again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. It almost puts a whole different perspective on the idea of reliving relationships again and again.
Well, what it does, and I mean, this links into the work that I do and my purpose and everything else, is that what it means is that what you're doing is you're kind of looking at that box of tapes, if you like, and saying to yourself, well, the technology's moved on. I've got all these Betamax or VHS tapes. What can I do with them? I can't play them on anything. So I need to move on and find a new format, and find a new way of working, or a new way of creating what it is that I want. And it puts you in control. It turns your life into, no, I'm controlling this narrative, no one else. And just because I've always been drawn to this type of person, I need to now look at, well, what is the reasons behind why I've been drawn to that? And it's back to your point about, we're all to some extent people pleasers, and, we go through our lives trying to be Mr. Nice Guy or Mrs. Nice Lady or whatever. And, that's where we find after a small period of time that vibration, that frequency isn't aligned. And then we go, oh, I don't understand why it's not working out. They were so nice at the beginning and, treated me so well. And now all of a sudden they're questioning where I'm going. And, well, you didn't text me after 5 minutes, or, what you doing? What do you mean you're away this weekend and I'm not coming with you? All of that sort of stuff. And you just think, no, that's because your purpose is not aligned.
Mm. So, with regards to the people that come to you for help, how do you help them to change the narrative?
The first thing I say to them is, look, I'm not qualified, and I'm qualified by lived experience, right? So I've got, as you can see behind me, I've got no certificates on the walls. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. So if you feel that you need deeper enlightenment or deeper help with that, then that's where you should go. But I can sit and listen. You know, I'm a human being. I'm qualified to listen. I'm qualified to nod my head and understand and ask questions. What I'm not qualified to do is to provide fixes and solutions and tell people what they should do, or make a comparison with when that was me going through that situation or whatever it was, or how I would handle it. It's incumbent on me to listen and understand. And if they ask for, well, you know, how does it work for you? Then I'll share that. But I'll ask them questions that hopefully get them to make their own conclusion eventually. And what I'm finding more and more, because I don't do a lot of one-to-one coaching. I mean, something I probably should aim to do, but what I'm finding more and more is that the people who are drawn to that frequency are coming to me and asking me the question, which is back to what we said at the beginning, isn't it? There's, you know, don't chase, attract.
Yeah, because what I've noticed, I've become obsessed with personal and spiritual development, which is a good thing. You know, you can be obsessed with different with bad things. But what I've worked out from going through 5 relationships over the last 8 years is that each time I felt I had almost evolved to the next level. And you will find that you'll go through. I don't think very few people I find will find that right person straight away, because as they evolve, there you'll find that people will start not to match anymore. And so you end up going through that turmoil. And that's where I feel like sometimes the holding on comes in. And so when you're able to realize that, and luckily I'm the one that got dropped each time. So obviously I went through turmoil, but in a good way. But each time I felt like I've gone to the next layer up. But it's that idea that if you stay the same, you're just going to stagnate. And if you stagnate, you're not progressing. You're probably degressing if you stagnate.
Yeah.
And you got to really allow yourself to get through that stagnation in order to progress.
Yeah, I mean, I've been single now for 5 years, and I don't want that to change. I don't see it changing. I've had situationships with a few people along the way, but very, very quickly things have emerged that have then ended up with us having a very honest conversation, where I've been able to resist or prevent me coming away from that feeling that it's me that's been abandoned, me that's been rejected, me that's been dumped, or whatever other phrase you want to use. And I've gone, no, it's purely as a result of us not vibrating at the same frequency. And what I've got now is a situation where a different way of thinking about it, that I practice now a relationship model called relationship anarchy. And what that basically means is that my friends are my lovers, right? Now, I don't mean that in the physical sense. What I mean by that is that I prioritize, or I put at a higher level, friendship love higher than romantic love. So anyone who comes into my life, if they resonate at the same frequency, then we can invite them to join my friendship group, where, you know, we will do stuff as friends together. If we choose to do other stuff, then that's between us. But in the majority of cases, my friends are my lovers, if you want to call them that. And that is, I've got 2 in particular that I do everything with. We'll go on dates, we'll go on holidays together, we'll have weekends away. You know, there's I don't need to put too fine a point on it, but the friendship part of what we do is much, much higher. So I'm going away in a couple of weeks with my very, very best friend, my partner in crime, my life person, if you want to call him that. And we don't even share a room. We won't even share a hotel room. You know, we have separate rooms, we have our own space, but we will do everything together. And we are stuck like glue. And people will say to us, wow, you two a couple? How long have you been together? And now we've taken to just saying, oh, 10 years. Because it's easier to just say that than try and explain to people who aren't resonating on this vibration, than trying to explain to them what the real situation is. And I think what that's done is that's flipped the whole thing on its head, because I think in relationships, in the traditional sense, what people look for is that romantic love, and they prioritize that over everything else and hope that the friendship side of it comes with it. And what happens very, very quickly is, you know, you might have that electricity at the beginning, but after a while you realize that, no, actually, we're not resonating on the same vibration, are we? We're not aligned. And then the other stuff starts sneaking out.
Bring it full circle in a minute. We'll bring it back to purpose, but is that idea that I've lost my trail of thought. Oh, I'll go full circle with regards to purpose. And what I've kind of come to figure out is that it's not necessarily about focusing on what that person can give you, but it's about seeing that person from a true perspective. So who are they really? What are they underneath the labels, underneath the surface? And being able to connect to them on that deep level. And that's where I feel like sometimes discovering your purpose, there's little steps. And the more that you evolve and grow, and the more, I think, if you meet people and go through relationships, you get to that point of growth and that point of discovering what gives you joy, what are your passions, what do you enjoy doing. And yeah, I think that's so important.
It totally is. And I mean, we've not veered off the subject of purpose, to be honest, in my mind. I mean, for me, this is all connected. And, you know, I said my personal purpose is to help people have happy lives again. Now, at the core of that, the key to me achieving that purpose is me having a happy life. And what I'm doing in this context is I'm not putting that responsibility onto someone else. I'm creating the environment for me to have a happy life, for me to recognize that loneliness, abandonment, and rejection were fairly key previously. And I now have created the environment where I don't have that anymore, because I'm not projecting that onto someone else. My business purpose is to ensure everyone feels safe in a masculine environment. So people working in automotive, for example, feel safe psychologically to be in that environment. I can't live and breathe that if I don't feel safe myself. If there's something about me or the way I'm operating or what's going on with the people around me, and I don't feel safe, then I need to address that in whatever way, shape, or form that is. And what I've noticed is that when I start having this conversation with people, I'm getting more and more people go, "Oh my God, that is so true. That really resonates with me." I go, "Of course it resonates." But what you're going to do is it's probably going to take you, like it's taken me, 5 or 6 years to come to terms with that, because you're going to go off and replay that tape again, aren't you? You're going to go off and, you know, date that person that you're unsure about. You kind of like, and when I hear somebody say, "Oh, you know, I'm dating somebody new," and you know, they tick most of the boxes, but not all of them. I'm like, well, why are you even doing it then? You know, why are we even looking at box ticking as an example? That's just irrelevant. If you put them higher up in the friendship thing, the box ticking thing doesn't even become a thing. You know, and it's back to that point about my purpose is to help other people feel safe. And the more I can't do that if I don't. And that is unfair and unrealistic for me to project that onto someone else. If someone wants to come into that and be a part of that, then they're more than welcome, and the more the merrier, because I'm then not expecting, you know, the miracles or change from someone else.
What you said there reminded me of what I was going to say a couple of minutes ago, that you mentioned about when you're in a relationship and the relationship almost becomes their all. And I feel like when that happens, you almost abandon yourself.
Mm.
So it's about that realization that when you're in that point and your relationship almost takes over,
Yeah.
bringing it back to you.
Mhm.
So always come back to yourself and connect to yourself. But I think we have this idea of almost putting this other person on a pedestal, seeing them more worthy, more good enough than we actually are. And
It
so it's I've done it before with so in a couple of podcast episodes, there's a couple of people that I have done work. They've got these courses or whatever groups, and I join them groups, and I've almost placed them up here,
Mm.
and we had a discussion because that's what she talks about, and I put them in a pedestal up here. It's that realization, having that chat with her, bringing yourself back down. That I might not be able to give what she gives, but I can give something just as good in another area.
Mhm.
And so it's knowing your own worth but that's again, knowing your own worth is also a journey, because
Yeah.
we in that mindset of in the mindset of not seeing our own worth. And so we have to go through them stages of bringing ourselves back to knowing that we are worthy. We're already worthy. We haven't got to worry about that, but it's our
Mm.
mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a conversation with some neighbours recently who invited me in for an impromptu sort of glass of wine late one Friday night, and we got chatting, and the lady in that house said, "Oh, why are you single? Why aren't you with somebody? You're so lovely. You deserve to be with somebody really nice." And I went, "Because I'm choosing that I want to be on my own." And I sort of frowned at that point, and she was like, "Well, I don't get that." And I didn't want to say 'cause it wasn't my place, but I look at them and I think they're in a relationship where they're both really lonely because they're not ticking each other's boxes, to go back to that phrase. Um, and I just thought, what's the alternative? The alternative is to, lonely is a state of mind, really. But you can be lonely in a room full of people, as I was, very much so. And
Mm.
I'm not lonely now. I'm on my own. I live on my own, sleep on my own, eat on my own, do everything on my own. If my flat's a mess, then that's down to me. If it's beautifully clean and tidy, that's also down to me. If I don't wash up for 3 days, it's down to me. So I do all of that stuff alone, but I'm not lonely because I've got some wonderful friends and contacts that I can meet up with whenever I want. I could be out with somebody different every night if I wanted to. But they are all friends, and they are, because that friendship love is on a higher plane than, like you said, putting somebody on a pedestal. And this works in business as well, because in my work around trying to ensure people are safe, in automotive, in the automotive industry, which is where I specialize. Just at the very heart of that, for example, is we want to attract a younger, more progressive audience, younger workers. But what if you're a young person, 18, 19 years old, and you're in a same-sex relationship, and you walk into that business and there's a whole bunch of men in their 40s or 50s, and one of the first questions is, "Oh, are you coming out with us on Friday night, mate? Bring your girlfriend." Uh, well, yeah, I haven't got one at the moment. Or, well, actually, I haven't got a girlfriend. I've got a boyfriend. Because the feeling of safety is then, well, what happens next? What are the consequences? What are the things that come back at you? What are the comments, the banter, the jokes, the little microaggressions, whatever it might be? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that is back to your point about the only way you can be okay with all of that is to be happy, content, and healed in yourself. And the reason I see lots of people wanting to connect with that is because deep down they're not happy and content in themselves.
I work in the fire service, so a retained
Mm.
firefighter. So you have, obviously the fire service has got a lot better. There's a lot more female firefighters, but in our station, it's all males. Not that females apply, but they've never got through. but it's more you're right. You get that male banter, and so yeah. You mentioned safety, yeah, and obviously safety is so important because safety is part of my mission, my purpose is to create safety, presence, and connection with myself first, so then I can help other men do the same. With regards to how do you help people with regards to their safety and businesses like the car industry?
What I'm finding I'm having success with, because this thing about sort of the resonating vibration and all of that, I think that works at that level as well in business. And actually, at the bottom of my little mission statement sheet that I have in front of me all the time, is at the bottom of that it says, "My goal is to do business with people who believe what I believe." Now, that's not to mean it being evangelical, because I don't go out there preaching this stuff. What I do is I go out there and I talk to businesses and I go, look, if you value this, if you're on the same page, if you're resonating, you've come to me and you've said we need to address this issue, or we need to think about the culture in our business, then that's who I'll work with. If you notice that there are issues, you've got people who are taking time off or time out, or that's not as productive, then for me, the first starting point in helping them is to sit down and have that conversation. And what I'm finding I'm having some great success with is getting rooms full of men in particular, but not exclusively, and asking them, what's got your attention right now? Because this is stuff they don't normally talk about. Most men go to work, they shut it off, they leave their problems at the door, and they get on with the job. Now, just as in the fire service, there's lots of things in automotive where safety is paramount. Physical safety, right? You've got to make sure that you are physically safe. What I'm talking to them about then is going, right, apply the same thinking, but this time to mentally safe, psychologically safe. So that young gay man comes to work in your business. Is he psychologically safe, or is he constantly looking around to see who's talking about him, who's whispering in the corners, who's making little comments, who's about to do something physical just to make a joke and make them look bigger and harder and all the rest of it? Because if you're doing that, you're not psychologically safe. And if, however, on the other hand, you are a tough cookie like I am, and you go out there and you own it, and you are confident in yourself, and like you can see if you're looking at the video, I've got my nails painted right now. I walk through the little town with my bright rainbow umbrella. I've got rainbow laces in some of my shoes that I wear, my trainers and stuff. And I own it. I absolutely own it. And I sit there and I go, come on then, if you want to try and make me feel unsafe because you need to make a joke or make yourself look bigger, then let's have that conversation. And as I always say, since coming out, I'm more of a man now than I've ever been. Because I think like that. So my thing now is to work with organizations to say, right, we can achieve this in your business as well. It isn't about making everyone, a tough little cookie. It is about saying psychological safety is going, no, these are the boundaries. This is what I'm talking about. How do we achieve that? And the first one is getting them talking.
So once you've got them talking, what is it that you look for or try and work with in order to start to create that safety?
So what we do is we give them a number of tools. So as I said, the first thing is the back to that question about purpose. We start with why. So let's look at, right, what is the business's why? Why are you actually here? Your purpose as a business is not to make somebody richer. It's not to give the shareholders a better return. Those are goals. There's a bigger, more transcendental reason why you exist. And that's your why. So now let's look at, well, how. So in my case, my business is there to ensure everyone's safe in automotive. The next part of that, the how, is that how do I get there is by having mental wealth champions in every business. Now, we're a long way off that, but what I want to do is I want to go, right, we've got a management commitment what I want to do now is to find people in this business who want to champion this subject, champion this cause, and for them to be the sponsors or the curators of what's going on in this organization, conscious that, you know, in 2 hours time I'm going to walk away and leave you to it, you know, and I don't want to come back in a month's time and suddenly think, oh, you've got all the best cups out again because I've arrived. You know, I want to see it warts and all, and I want to know that you as a team are working on creating that. And that's what I will then work with them to skill them up, give them the tools, make sure that they've got the right sort of attitude and so on.
You mentioned earlier, obviously, it always begins with yourself. Was there a time that you felt really unsafe, and how did you start to step into that unsafeness in order to create that safety?
I don't think I ever felt really well. I don't think I ever felt really unsafe. I think it's just as life has progressed and evolved. I mean, I suppose on reflection, and I didn't feel this at the time, I was curious about my sexuality, you know, when I was like 14, 15, which was 1981. And anyone who's listening or watching and remembers that year or that era will know that that was not the right time at all to be openly gay or bisexual, or, you know, the LGBT community didn't exist. There was lots going on. You know, if you ever saw programs like It's a Sin on Channel 4 a few years ago, you know, that was more like a documentary because it was so accurate as to how things were. And it was awful. It was awful. So I guess looking back on it, I didn't feel safe then because, you know, my mum, who I love dearly, who died very young actually, she was very, very young when she had me. So she was navigating life as well. And when I became a teenager, she was only in her mid-30s herself. So I look back on that now and I think part of the reason that I didn't come out, if you want to call it that, publicly, was back then I was feared, without knowing it, I feared getting beaten up. I feared something worse. I feared being ostracized. And I probably feared, actually more so, my mum being the kind of person who actually would have gone around telling everyone and broadcasting it because she was proud of me. But then creating a situation for me that would have been quite difficult. I'm sure I would have, you know, survived, but I suppose psychologically, this is the point about psychological safety. A lot of this stuff happens at a subconscious level. And looking back on it, I go, yeah, actually, you know, and being bisexual, it was very easy for me to cover it up by, you know, getting married to a woman, having kids, having a life that just looks normal. So yeah, without knowing that I was unsafe, I would say that the early 80s, I'd look back on that and go, yeah, I was definitely unsafe. And I look back at pictures of me now at that age and I go, how did no one know? You know, the way I used to do my hair or the way what I would wear, or I was like, yeah, the clues were there.
So how did you start to build that safety? Because obviously in the 80s you didn't feel safe. Over the 90s and 2000s, what was it that you did to start to create that safety in yourself?
Um, well, I never did. I mean, this is again why I look at the industry that I specialize in. You know, so not only did I get married, but I went and ended up having a career in probably the most male-dominated, masculine environment you could imagine. And probably without knowing it, psychologically created a safety net around me that meant I could hide very easily. You know, I could create this safety again. I mean, you don't know it at the time because you're going along with life and doing what you're expected to do. You know, we talked about the system earlier, and, you know, getting the mortgage and having the cars and the holiday home and everything else. And just created an area of safety around me that, you know, I didn't deliberately sit down and think, oh, you know, I need to sort put some boundaries around myself. You know, that's the sort of stuff that's only come about since I've been reflecting and working on this stuff.
I think the 80s, 90s, and probably 2000s were the years where we gradually, as we got to the 2000s and 2010s, the social media became a bit more prevalent, computers, and so we had more access to materials. And obviously now you can type into Google or YouTube how to create boundaries, how to create safety, how to heal your inner child, and we've got access to these materials now, which are easy to access. And so it's back then, though, I was born in mid-80s. It was more you were outside doing stuff, more interactive, less computers. But yeah, I think obviously we have the advantage now that we can do stuff. We can do personal growth easily. And so yeah, I suppose yeah, we've got access to it all now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I mean, you know, I never had a community or anything around me back then where I could have sat down with someone and said, look, I think I might, you know, I might be sort of this way inclined, so to speak. Certainly not in the workplace, not in my family, not in any of the people close to me. I had one friend at school, and we had some very open conversations about it when I was about 15, I think. But, you know, conscious of age and all the rest of it, you know, we didn't progress that conversation any further. And, you know, because fear kicked in. And, you know, and you're right. I mean, now we've got a whole plethora of stuff that, you know, helps people with that. And I mean, just on that front, I'm not here specifically to talk about LGBT issues, but just on that front, you know, that community's always been there, you know. And I hear lots of people saying, oh, you know, this is like a modern thing, it's woke, it's this, it's that. No, it's not. It's always been there. It's just that now there are more of us going, do you know what? We can vibrate at whatever frequency we want. And if you don't like it, clear off.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And what I still see amongst the LGBT community, that there are a lot of people who don't have that strength. And this is why the pride marches and the pride festivals are an opportunity for people to come together and be who they are with other people who are being who they are, with minimal fear of, you know, some kind of negative consequence. And that again is, you know, if we're taking that learning from that into the workplace, for example, that's where the everyone's safe bit comes from.
So I say
Safety.
it's creating safety, and obviously a lot within safety is there is a lot of fear,
Mm,
because when you step into different things going on like the LBG community, um, you don't you don't you're more likely to get ridiculed because a lot of people see you as slightly different.
yeah.
And yeah, and so it's that, you know, and it's almost requires so much courage and strength to do it.
Well, and also, I mean, you know, another level in business, you know, if you talk about, or traditionally, if you talked about mental health, for example, you know, if you ever came forward and said, look, I'm struggling, or, you know, I'm on the edge of a breakdown, or I'm stressed, or I can't cope, or whatever, that typically, again, especially in very male dominated environments, was seen as a weakness, you know. And the consequences of that were that you would limit your career, or you would limit your opportunities. And as a result, most, not all, but most men never ever came forward,
Mm.
spoke about it, because they never felt safe, because, like you say, somebody was going to make a judgment. And it's sad that we, right now, you know, as we come towards the end of 2025, we have a global political situation that has almost taken us back 20 years to that place where, you know, people who go, no, actually normal means this, and anything that's slightly outside of that is now abnormal, and I'm either going to mock it or get rid of it or do what I can to restrict it. And that's being emboldened by some of the political stuff that's going on around the world.
Yeah, that's their insecurities, really.
Oh, 100%.
They're projecting onto other people.
Yeah, I mean, when you put what is effectively a 4-year-old boy in a 79-year-old man's body in the White House, then is it any wonder that we're going to get this ripple go throughout the world that says, this is how you should be, how you should look, how you should act. And if you're outside of that in any way, shape, or form, then you're now no longer safe.
Yeah, yeah. So, how can people get in contact with you, and what is it that you do?
What is that I what? Sorry, that I do?
So, what is it that you do, and how can people get in contact?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that I do. Let's start with the contact bit first. So you can get me on LinkedIn, Stephen with a PH J Whitten. I put the J in there because that's a little tip for you on LinkedIn. If you put a J in there, then what happens is when you get any unsolicited automated messages, they come through as "Dear Stephen J." Well, no one would ever write to you personally like that, would they? So you can identify what's an automated message and delete it. So just a little tip.
Yeah.
So yeah, Stephen J Whitten. That's Whitton. I'm on LinkedIn on there. Or you can send me an email, which is stephen.whitten@menable, that's menable.org. So that's how you can get hold of me. In terms of what I do, so there's a mix of things really. So first and foremost, the day job is that I run and promote Menable, which is the organization that's aimed at ensuring everyone is safe in a masculine environment. So that's working with organizations to help them achieve psychological safety. And that's about male allyship. We haven't touched on that, but that's another key part of it as well. So in support of that, I'm a professional speaker. So I get hired to go and talk to big audiences about what I do, and about how we can get psychological safety into businesses. And I also, back to the point about doing what gives you joy, I'm a professional MC. So I get hired to host awards nights, conferences, cabarets, that sort of thing. So I do a bit of that. Put me good voice on, me radio voice. Good evening, everyone. That sort of voice, you know what I mean. And I think I touched on it earlier that my latest thing is that I'm also a part-time drag queen, which is just adorable. I love it. It's just look at the smile on my face. It's just something that's just full of energy. It's amazing.
It's finding things which you really enjoy, and when you do, like I find podcasting brings me a lot of joy. And so usually I'm in the zone and I'm smiling like yes, yes, kind of thing. And yeah, that's key. Thank you very much, Stephen.
James, you're a star. Thank you for creating this platform and for giving people like me the opportunity to share stuff. So thank you.
Thank you very much.